Okay, folks, there's a steady stream of people coming in now, so I will officially make a start. Hopefully, everybody can get in. I'll try and keep my eye on the lobby if anyone gets stuck to let them in. But thanks very much for coming along to this webinar. And it's fantastic to be hosting as part of Net Zero Week. Hopefully, you've had a chance to attend some of the other sessions and see the range of topics that's out there. It's fantastic that there's such a diverse range of topics and mildly terrifying as well. I think it's a good reflection of the challenges that we see in the net zero transition, but there's opportunities there as well. And that's why we're here today, specifically looking at hydrogen, and within that, looking at the skills transition there as well. I can see the list of participants and I can see quite a few names that I recognize, which is always lovely. So thanks very much for coming back. But there's a lot of names there that I don't recognize. And that means we've never met before. And that is a perfect opportunity for me to officially introduce myself. So my name's Nathan. I'm a lecturer at Queen's University Belfast. I'm from the School of Chemistry and Chemical Engineering. And specifically, I'm the Programme Director for postgraduate taught courses in Net Zero Engineering. Now I'm here today on behalf of Queen's, but I'm actually representing the Hydrogen Island Association as well. And the other speakers that you're going to be hearing from during the session are all part of Hydrogen Island. We want to showcase some of the work that we've been doing alongside or even through the association and talk about some of the work we've done around developing skills and facilitating the skills transition as well. So you may or may not have noticed that there is only me here at the moment. However, I do have some people that will be speaking as part of this webinar. Now, July is a busy time of year. So when we were given the opportunity to present here, we decided that we'd actually do it as an on-demand webinar. We'd pre-record our presentations to try and make it easier. But thankfully, I was able to find a bit of time to physically be here or virtually be here to introduce the topics and to give you a little bit of background. And also to give you a summary towards the end. And if there's time, I'm more than happy to take some questions and hopefully provide some answers. Or if you want to get into any sort of discussion, that's fine with me as well. So this is a blended webinar, I think is the best way of describing it. I'm here on the live version. But as I hand over to some of the presenters, we're going to be heading towards the recorded content. Now, this is a webinar, so we're always tempting fate to make sure that technology works for us. Rather than going between sort of live and recorded, I put all the recorded stuff together into one shot so that we can go through it. It does mean that you'll also hear the recorded version of myself. So you have the live version and the recorded version. I can only apologize for having two versions of me, but it does also mean that I have to listen to a record of myself, which I can guarantee is not my favorite thing to do. But at the end of that, if you do have any questions, I'm more than happy to take them. And the chat should be open for the duration of the webinar. So if you have anything that you want to raise, any questions, any points, by all means, feel free to do that. And if I can respond to them while we're going through the recordings as well, I'm more than happy to do that. But you'll see on the slide who else is going to be presenting. We have myself, we have James, we have David, and we have Paul. We're all part of the Hydrogen Island Association, and we come from different institutes as well. We've been involved in different work in relation to not just net zero and hydrogen, but specifically around skills development as well. So you're going to hear from each of us as we talk through some of the work that we've been involved with. If you haven't come across the Hydrogen Island Association before, then I'm more than happy to introduce it just now. It is essentially a platform that allows engagement between a whole range of different stakeholders that are interested in hydrogen. So it's not just academic, it's not just industry, and it's not just policy as well. It's a platform that allows us all to speak and ultimately showcase what's being done and try and address the challenges that we have going forward. We can demonstrate what we're doing really well here in Ireland and across the island of Ireland. But we can also show how that aligns with what's being done in the UK and what's being done in Europe as well, and how we can contribute towards that. And it gives us an opportunity to be able to discuss with a whole range of stakeholders how we can overcome those challenges and how we need a level of integration and collaboration as well. You're more than welcome to engage with the Hydrogen Island Association. And at the end of the webinar, I'll give a little nod to the next conference that we have coming up in November as well. In terms of hydrogen, that's why we're here today. That's what we're discussing. Hydrogen's fascinating topic, even within the renewable landscape as an energy vector. I always argue it's very different to anything that we have at the moment. We could have a lot of different webinars on a lot of different discussions within looking at hydrogen. But what we often look at is an image that you can see here. This is the hydrogen hub concept, or the power to X concept. If you've come across it before, that's fantastic. If you haven't, it's okay. I'll quickly talk through it just now. Basically, what we're looking at is we consider it as a power to X. Everything on the left-hand side is the power input into this concept. What we have on the right-hand side is X, the applications of hydrogen. The bit in the middle, the two, is a conversion process. Now, more often than not, when we talk about hydrogen, we talk about green hydrogen. So in this instance, the conversion process is electrolysis, the splitting of water into hydrogen and oxygen. So we take a renewable energy form coming from wind or solar or even geothermal, and we apply the electricity to an electrolyzer to generate hydrogen, and that's ultimately what we're aiming for. Now, as a concept and as a visual, it's fantastic because it gives us a holistic view of what hydrogen energy system is capable of doing. And it's images like this that's led to hydrogen being often referred to as a silver bullet. That's a good and a bad thing. It's not a term that I use an awful lot for hydrogen because I don't entirely agree with it. But it comes from the fact that if we look on the right-hand side, what we can see is X. All the applications for hydrogen, all the theoretical applications of where we can use hydrogen. And we can use it across the board. It is a very versatile energy vector. My point is always that just because we can use it everywhere doesn't mean that we should use it everywhere. So I'm always a huge advocate for hydrogen, but I'm a huge advocate in making sure that we understand when and where to use hydrogen. Ultimately, we want as much impact as possible. There will be locations where we need to use hydrogen for heating. There'll be other locations where it makes much more sense to use it in the transport sector. We have to be capable of assessing those situations. You look at the geography, you look at the various parameters that drive this. You look at the availability of supply chains. You look at the availability or the demand in certain sectors for hydrogen as well. And at that point, then we can decide whether hydrogen is best suited to that. And we look at this in the sort of context of what does that mean when we talk about skills? Well, the image on the right-hand side here is the European Hydrogen Backbone Map that got published last year. This shows what we're aiming for by 2040. It shows the repurposing of existing gas lines and the building of new ones. What it represents is hydrogen infrastructure, and what that represents is a hydrogen market and a renewable hydrogen economy. It's very difficult to get to that point, however. We have challenges of where we are now and where we want to be. And the challenges aren't just necessarily in relation to the technology, and it's not even in relation to how many tens of thousands of miles of pipeline that we need to install. We look at what's needed in order to do that, and I'm a huge advocate of people are needed. People and skills are needed in order to do that, because to install the capacity targets that we need projects. In order for those projects to really deliver, you need skills. And then you need people to have those skills as well. So it's one thing to talk about the targets, but we have to look at what underpins all of those targets. And that's people and skills, as far as I'm concerned. So when we talk about the skills transition and we talk about the emerging, and it is a rapidly emerging hydrogen economy, what we're often talking about is a skills wheel that looks like this. So you can see the different segments that are part of that skills wheel. And these are some of the segments that we're going to be talking about over the next 30 to 35 minutes. And that's where you're going to be hearing from Paul and David, myself, and James as well. We're all involved in different pieces of work. They all overlap. They're all complementary as well, but they all fit together in this skills wheel. Now, we won't be covering every segment on here, but we'll try and cover as much as possible. At the end of the recordings, I'm more than happy to come back on and summarize. And if you do have any questions, by all means, pop them into the chat or feel free to ask them at the end as well. So that's really the backdrop to where we are. That's the introduction to hydrogen. Now, I have absolutely no idea what your own experience is with hydrogen. I've got no idea if you are an advocate of hydrogen or if you think that it's possibly not going to work. But either way, it's fantastic that you've come along to find out more. And hopefully, this is an area that you're interested in. And if it's an area that you're interested in collaborating or engaging with us, please feel free to get in touch with us. There's lots of different parts of this work that is open to collaboration and is necessary. We need that level of engagement across the board in order to continue to keep driving some of this work as well. So with that being said, I'm going to hand over, as it is, to our first speaker, and that's going to be Paul McCormick, and he's going to take us through some of the opportunities that lie ahead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly switch over to our pre-recorded content, and I'm going to make sure that now I'm going to have to rely on everyone on the call. If you can't hear it, by all means, just let me know in the chat, but hopefully the audio will come through at the same time.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Paul McCormick from Hydrogen Ireland, and I'd like to thank Nathan for hosting the session as part of Net Zero Week, and Sean Coles and the team for enabling us to be part of this from the 6th to the 12th of July, and looking at to inform the public and industry and the wider opportunities that net zero is bringing, but especially from us in Hydrogen Ireland, the opportunities that clean hydrogen, clean energy will bring to the economy, to the workforce and to society. The Repower EU have set targets of 1 million jobs and 20 million tonnes of renewable hydrogen per annum over the next 15 to 20 years. How do we access part of that? How do we ensure that Ireland, North and South, the UK and Europe are able to secure parts of that and make sure that transition to net zero delivers the benefit not just to the economy but to industry and to society at large? And critical to that is realising the opportunity and the steps needed to access that opportunity. And that's going to be crucial to be achieved through a skilled workforce, to ensure that we now deliver the skilled workforce that's required now and grows to meet the challenges in the future. The FE sector, in partnership with the higher education sector, are working, especially being led by Queen's University in Belfast. We have developed a range of training materials from level 2 right through to train the trainer and level 7 to make sure that all of the economy and all of industry can access the steps in training that they require to make the transition to net zero, to ensure that the skilled workforce are able then to pivot in their online skills journey and help their industry to move forward. That skilled workforce is at the core of any process industry, and that skilled workforce is going to be the oil in the engine of the transition to net zero. As we enable rapid acceleration towards net zero, it's going to be driven by people, driven by the skills required to move that forward at the right time and at the right level, and understanding that at every stage within the hydrogen value chain, different skills, different expertise and different opportunities will arise and must be met if we're to make sure there are no gaps in training, there are no gaps in industry, and the transition to net zero is achieved, but importantly, the economy in transition is also assisted to move forward. Upstream and downstream parts of the supply chain require opportunities and require the needs to be met. And that includes production, storage, installation, operations, transportation, and all of the different opportunities that we look at in that value chain, and recognising the different levels of vocational workers, professional workers and others to close those gaps and to ensure that in cohesion we're able to access that opportunity to move forward in that transition and to ensure then that we're able to move that forward. The opportunity for all parts of the economy. Tools and skills are the navigational aids for this economy in transition. If we navigate the path and plot out our route forward and identify the requirements at each stage, we will be able to recognise the opportunity in advance and address the skills and opportunity needs as they arise. The skills blocks that we are laying down now in working in partnership with other associations across Europe, Hydrogen Ireland is creating the foundations for the emerging hydrogen economy, ensuring that all levels of skills will have access, tools and opportunities to make that transition and to assist the companies they're in. But importantly, as we upskill and reskill parts of society, other opportunities are addressed. We will then contribute Through these modules, the micro modules, the online learning, and the accreditation, help develop a skilled workforce in partnership with others and importantly in partnership with industry and the public sector to make sure that the workforce is fit for purpose, fit for the future, and that we're able to secure the opportunities in the growing hydrogen economy at all stages in the value chain to deliver the economy we need for the future, the quality jobs, the social benefits and the environmental benefits then also of a net zero economy. We're currently looking at the skills gaps and addressing those with the modules and the materials we've developed and making sure there's a cohesive pathway so there's a cycle of participation for learners there to upskill, to reskill at a time and an opportunity when suits them to make sure that as the opportunities arise, they're pre-skilled, they're equipped to move the journey forward and they're equipped for the journey. And the training that we're delivering is a boost to the industry in process. It's a boost to the new emerging opportunities in fuel cells, in electrolyzers, but importantly also in hydrogen fuel vehicles, refueling, maintenance, and all of the other different myriad of opportunities that will arise. As we look at opportunities now, there will be new industries, new technologies that we haven't even seen yet will arise from the new economy. And by having an agile approach to it and a partnership approach, we'll be able to identify those and address the gaps before they arise. The majority of the skills will be at college level and graduate level. Engineers in particular will have the skills and the opportunities to look at the quality opportunities there for them as a much highly sought after opportunity and skills for them. Industry currently reports an appetite for graduates that must have the technical skills they need in the area, and also new apprenticeship routes will be crucial. Developing those higher level apprenticeship routes and the reskilling opportunities to bring the workers to the industry to help power that forward and ensure that we stay ahead of the hydrogen curve and that industry has the opportunity to remain globally competitive and increase their reach there as well. Our research shows that the hydrogen workforce development requires engagement from all, public sector, private sector, working in cohesion to address those gaps, to look at the opportunities, and as different legislation and hydrogen strategies come into play, where the needs arise, where the opportunities arise, where we in Hydrogen Ireland, working with the higher education sector and the further education sector, and in partnership with other hydrogen associations, are able then to look at the skills modules that are needed and share and exchange those so we complete a full topography of skills requirements and the skills maps for those personal journeys. Immediately opportunities is working there is in the health and safety, looking to see where health and safety is paramount in all training and all works that are there. All technical workers in the process industry, regardless of expertise, require upskilling. Companies that are currently working in fossil fuel industry or dirt industries, how do they pivot to new green opportunities? And it's through the skills of their workers. It's been worker-led and worker-driven and providing the mechanics that they need to convert to operate at the highest level, and so their companies then can grow in scale in novel applications. As we look in summary at the opportunity, it's recognizing the scale of the opportunity, recognizing and breaking that down into different levels that are required, looking at the levels of training and certification and CPD points. We have developed the very first hydrogen training academy in Europe that is certified by OCN and also awards CPD points. So it allows a twin journey approach for different types of workers. That Hydrogen Training Academy has been shared with other hydrogen associations, and we're looking to build on this momentum, as I said earlier, to maintain that we're ahead of the hydrogen curve. Our workers have the best opportunities, and then industry has the best potential to grow and secure the competitive advantage they need for the future. Thank you very much indeed.
Hello, my name is David Rooney and I am a Professor of Chemical Engineering at Queen's University Belfast. What I want to cover over the next few minutes are some of my thoughts on the challenges, the frontiers, and many of the varied skills needed to realise the opportunities ahead. One of the first things which comes to mind when picturing the words frontiers and challenges is an image of old Western movies, a caravan of wagons heading out into the unknown across a dusty but often beautiful landscape in hope of a better life. There are similarities when it comes to the energy transition, elements of both fear and excitement of the unknown, pioneers, some seeking riches, others just looking for a better, cleaner environment in which to raise a family, and of course, the ubiquitous snake oil remedies which will solve all of our problems. Clearly, universities have a significant and vital role to play. In one sense, they have three duties. The first is to scan the horizon so that we can safely steer society to a future destination. Secondly, to support society and prepare it for life in that future. And finally, to assure that there's a pipeline of talent capable of thriving. That latter aspect of nurturing talent is what we are considering and talking about in this session, but it cannot be considered in isolation of the others. What we need is a broad range of talent across all aspects of the learning journey, subject experts through to specialist technicians. Each has a role to play if we are to achieve success, and we must act as a team if we're to deliver the necessary change in the remaining time frame. Failure increases the very significant risk of turning much more of the world into that catastrophic Dust Bowl of 1930s America. The skills needed by those future pioneers needs to grow within a complex landscape. As an engineer, I believe that thermodynamics should win. As a pragmatist, I know that economics will beat thermodynamics. And as a human, it's clear that politics will often beat economics. For example, when hydrogen boiler switching projects inched closer to reality in England, some of those in the communities pushed back. They did not want to be an experiment when there was no real need for change. Gas worked perfectly fine. The point is that simple thermodynamic arguments will not work on their own. The argument must also show how people will be economically and emotionally better off as a result, and our skills training needs to match. With that in mind, I think there are many ways to describe the key challenges and skills, but I will keep it to 4 general areas. The first is core disciplinary. Underpinning a lot of the areas are core disciplinary strengths. The heart of STEM skills, economics, and the social sciences all remain. However, I do think that there is a need for more complex examples about how these apply to existing and possible future hydrogen and low carbon economy scenarios. We need to direct a lot of subconscious effort into how these skills inform new technologies and social benefits. The second are advanced manufacturing skills. This covers all specific component technologies, digital and physical, including automation, design, and robotics. Within Northern Ireland, there's a strong supply chain in the aviation sector, from precision manufacturing of metals and plastic components through to metal coating and advanced composite materials. To me, there is an opportunity to build on that expertise, create new businesses, and pivot existing expertise to the manufacture of technologies to accelerate the hydrogen economy. Hence the need to reskill and develop flexible, agile content which builds on the core disciplinary aspects and takes them to a new level. The third is systems thinking. All of our analysis to date suggests that the economics of hydrogen are significantly enhanced by integrating green hydrogen alongside other areas, including things like load balancing, e-fuel production, utilization of oxygen, and utilization of waste heat. This systems approach requires skills from systems modeling to systems build across multiple scales, such as the powertrain of a bus, a boat, all the way through to community or city scale projects. It needs to have a full grasp of risk, recognize the value of place-based resources, and seek to optimize and aggregate opportunity. The fourth is the value chain. Articulating the value of hydrogen and low carbon as an economy is in itself a skill. We cannot deliver success if general society will not embrace it. The evidence needs to be robust, the nuances understood, and the value apparent. The skills behind all of these are manifold, crossing leadership, engineering, psychology, policy, social, and community. It's not easy, but it is critical, and we do need to address it. So as we look to that new frontier and consider the skills needed, we can think back to the pioneers of old. We can work together across the further education, higher education sector, industry and government to provide society with the skills and tools needed for not only the journey, but also the destination. Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to the next section or the next segment of our skills wheel, and here we're looking at upskilling. I don't feel the need to have to introduce myself. This is just the recorded version of the same person that's doing the webinar live as well, so apologies, you have both versions of me. I'm actually presenting this on behalf of a lot of people that have been involved in this particular piece of work, but not least Alan Reed. So Alan is a principal lecturer for industry engagement at North Regional College, and he's been fundamental to the work that I'm going to be discussing here, specifically the Hydrogen Training Academy and its ability to upskill people, and the fact it demonstrates how that can be done. And when we're talking about upskilling, what we're really talking about is identifying where there's a gap in our skills. So if we talk about the transition, whether it's net zero or the emerging hydrogen economy, we're looking at where we are now and where we want to be and how we get to that point, essentially. And we realize that there are steps to be taken, but that there's gaps there as well, especially for hydrogen. We've seen rapid growth in the hydrogen sector, and what's predicted is even more growth if we're to meet some of the targets that we're setting out. And that's very different. Hydrogen is a different energy vector to the ones that we're familiar with in the renewable landscape as well. We're going to see bigger changes. We have to achieve more, and we're going to have to see more development as well. And that ultimately creates bigger skills gaps. Now that is a challenge, of course, but it presents an opportunity as well. It presents an opportunity in the framework of upskilling for people to develop skills in order to contribute towards closing that gap. And there's an importance of all that as well. And you can see some of the key advantages of it, not just for the sector and the industry and the company, but for the individual as well. It means that we can develop within this transition. And that's all important because we're looking to support an emerging hydrogen economy. And it is emerging. We're taking big steps, and you can see all the headlines that are coming out, especially more recently around the European hydrogen bids and the development of a market there as well. So when we talk about upskilling here, what we're talking about is the Hydrogen Training Academy. So you can see an overview of the academy on the right hand side, and what this was really looking at was cohesion between different levels of learning and content as well. So from level 2 all the way through to level 7, that's basically the integration of what we see at further education and higher education institutes as well. And I have a little bit of a bugbear when it comes to this. I think there should always be a huge level of integration between different institutes. And I think we should be looking beyond that as well. We should be looking at schools and academies as well to make sure that we can understand what's being taught at each level and how that can be developed as well. And that's really what's been at the core of the Hydrogen Training Academy as well. So you can see there, in terms of delivering it, level 2 is looking at the hydrogen basics. That can go through into hydrogen gas safe and then hydrogen technologies. We can see continuous professional development, and it can go all the way through to level 7, which is actually one of my PG certs, and I'll discuss that in the later sections as well. So looking at hydrogen power as well. And a key element of this was making sure that there's not just cohesion, but there's overlap, there's complementary content there, so we can see that development. Depending on what the need of the person is for upskilling, they may come in at different levels, and that's all they need. But there's that opportunity to come in at a level and build through that and work towards something else as well. So the Hydrogen Training Academy has really been developed because we've seen that growing demand for skills. We understand the hydrogen sector is growing, and it's growing globally, but when we look at Northern Ireland, we obviously have right bus to demonstrate that demand. What comes with that demand is a necessity for specialized skills. So the academy has its part to play with that in terms of skill development, and it's not just about academic, it's about education collaboration with industry. So we have a curriculum that reflects that as much as possible so that we understand where the demand and where the need is, and we make sure that the different levels within the Hydrogen Training Academy are able to align with that as much as possible. Because the more that we can do that, the more that we can have impact. There is no need for us to design courses just for the sake of designing courses. These are courses that have to meet a specific need. We're looking at what the gaps are going forward, and that engagement with industry to understand what's coming and where their need is going to be means that we can design a Hydrogen Training Academy in order to try and meet that as much as possible. Of course, one of the biggest ways to demonstrate that we're meeting industry need and we're aligning with the skills gap is to have accreditation. So it's fantastic to see that within the Hydrogen Training Academy, Level 3 has been awarded OCN accreditation. And this is something that we're continuing to take forward as well throughout the Hydrogen Training Academy and within the courses that I'm involved with that I'll discuss later as well, that making sure that we have accreditation in place and people understand and can see the impact that we're having. And finally, another big part of this is the way that we deliver content. Now, this is a challenge for any educational institution as well, because we are moving away from more traditional classroom learning. But when we talk about hydrogen, when we talk about Hydrogen Training Academy, there does have to be a balance there, because there is a physical element to it as well, and we need to look at making sure that people have hands-on experience with technology, especially when it comes to fuel cells, electrolyzers and hydrogen boilers as well. But the other side of it, when we're looking at some of the fundamentals, it's important that people can access that in a way and at a time that suits them. Making people sit in a classroom doesn't always work. So what we've been looking at is a transition to remote learning. And this is something that I've done in my own courses as well that I'll talk about in one of the later segments, but it ultimately increases accessibility and flexibility as well. So you can decide when you want to learn. You can fit it into your schedule essentially in such a way that it has more impact for you as well. We still want to make sure we have engagement. You want to know that there's support there and there's ways of doing that, and you still want engagement with other students as well. So there's a balance to be struck, but offering that just gives a huge level of flexibility, and that's really important for the Hydrogen Training Academy, but for skills development generally. We need to make sure that we're not just developing relative accredited content, but we're able to deliver it in a way that people can get the most out of and that can have the biggest impact. And just finally, for this section on upskilling, moving forward with this, one of the key elements is collaboration, that continuous engagement with people working in industry, education and government as well. So if you're on this call and you're listening to the recording and you're interested to find out more or interested in potentially collaborating and engagement to help shape some of this, please by all means get in touch. You need to get in touch with myself directly or anyone that you've seen or heard from on the call as well, and we'll be happy to talk about potential opportunities.
My name is Dr. James Carton, Dublin City University, Ireland, where I teach engineering students in sustainability, decarbonisation, and with a focus on technologies such as hydrogen. As we develop our student skills throughout the university, the graduates ultimately enter jobs across the economy into decarbonisation. The challenge with decarbonisation, however, is the skills that we give our students today may not be applicable to the technologies being developed in the future. However, we suggest that the fundamental education that we give them, the tools, the experience, the knowledge, is very applicable for many applications in industry. And we call these skills adjacency skills. The skills that can be developed upon within different sectors so that the student can effectively perform within unknown sectors of the future, utilizing skills and knowledge from physics and technology in technologies of the future that we may not know that exist yet. And we see some of those skills as fundamental skills, such as knowledge base, the experience they gain within their life as a student, but also as they evolve in their careers, and skills such as project management and communication that are also very important. As we've developed from technology across the last last 100 years, we've moved from the linen industry, the paper industry, into the transport industry. And now a new range of technologies are entering our roads and our lives and our buildings. New electric vehicles and electric buses, new factories of the future and data centers, new ways of decarbonizing existing systems such as the cement industry. And as we need and require more renewable energy, we're looking to offshore wind technology and offshore platforms that will be developed at huge scale across European countries. And the interesting thing with these sectors and these technologies is that there is already a base of worker and there's a base of education available to them currently. And the challenge really, as we scale up the electrification of transport, the introduction of technologies such as hydrogen to decarbonize those hard to abate sectors such as heavy transport, heavy industry, high temperature processes and industry. Those skills that those workers and those students already have will be useful to enable them to move into a new career within their industries. We've seen this in Ireland with the hydrogen bus rollout in the north of Ireland and the south of Ireland. We've seen the necessity of training of bus drivers and also the mechanics that operate and maintain these buses during trials and now as the buses scale out in Northern Ireland and Republic of Ireland. We see this with energy storage technologies. Currently, we're using battery technology that's been rolled out, and we see the skills that are being used in the energy industry being applicable in the energy storage industry. And we soon hope that those skills will also be useful where we look at hydrogen storage technologies across the island of Ireland. An example where we looked at, which in relation to hydrogen, was a project called High Skills, a European funded project. And effectively this project, we asked hundreds of companies across Europe what was their skills gaps in relation to decarbonisation, and specifically what was their needs in relation to the introduction of hydrogen within the European economy. And from that survey, we got lots of information. And what we realized is that effectively there are plumbers, mechanics, fitters, and operators of technologies of today that engage with electrical systems, plumbing systems, and mechanical systems that are very similar to the technologies required for the hydrogen deployment, where hydrogen might be deployed in transport, it might be deployed in tankers, storage, or even the operation of hydrogen electrolyzers. And so we saw that the skills in those existing sectors of plumbing, electrical work, fitters and mechanics were actually very similar to those skills required for engaging with technologies such as hydrogen. So what we did within this is we looked at the really key skills that were necessary, and we recognized that safety skills was one paramount skill that was recognized by the survey, but also in relation to operating and working on technologies. We also looked at expertise in relation to very specific areas. But also we recognized that the basics of something like hydrogen was also necessary to enable the technicians to actually understand the basics of why they're actually operating a new technology such as hydrogen. So from that, we developed a number of modules, 8 in total, that covered, as I said, hydrogen basics, hydrogen safety, but also then more focused into specific technical components such as pressure vessels, hydrogen storage, and the operation and maintenance of equipment. We looked at hydrogen delivery, pipes, etc., hydrogen combustion for certain applications, and then tying it all off in relation to hydrogen sensors and technologies that was able to sense leaks, again enabling safety within the technology. We've developed these modules now, tested them in classrooms across Europe, and now these modules are openly available to all that need it. We see that these modules are being downloaded and used by people interested in this area, interested in gaining degrees and certificates in this area, so that they are able to actually develop skills in the hydrogen sector. We see that students and mature technicians want to actually diverge into these new areas for job security, to enable decarbonisation, and actually to learn something new. And we see those adjacency skills that they know already to really align with the technology such as hydrogen, with an aim to decarbonise the European and global economy over the next couple of years. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, and that brings us to the end of the wheel, or the last segment of the wheel. And unfortunately, you're stuck with me again. But what I wanted to talk about in this part was skills transferability, and specifically discuss and showcase what we've been doing at Queen's around the courses in net zero engineering. So you can see on the slide the idea of the skills and employment framework that we associate with not just our net zero transition, but also with the hydrogen economy as well, an emerging hydrogen economy. And there's these three key pillars: investment to support low carbon jobs, pathways for low carbon careers, and perhaps most importantly, support for transitioning sectors as well. Every sector, every industry is transitioning, and with that, people are transitioning as well. And we see people within sectors that are very willing to undergo that transition, especially in relation to their skills development. But we see people wanting to transition into some of those sectors that are undergoing their development as well. And that's where I've ultimately tried to place my courses. They're designed in such a way to try and support and facilitate each of those pillars, whether people are looking for a pathway into a low carbon career, or if they're already in a sector and they're looking to transition and either upskill or reskill and have a level of transferability there as well. So you can see the four symbols there kind of, I guess, reflect ultimately what we're trying to do. We see technology or science, we see integration, and we teaching and critical thinking. And behind all of that, at the end of the day, like I've said before, people and skills. That's what we require, and that's ultimately where the MSc in Net Zero Engineering at Queen's comes into it. So we can look at the breakdown of the course. You can see on the left-hand side there, so I put everything under this umbrella of Net Zero Engineering, but within that there are also additional standalone courses. The way that we designed the courses was to try and have as much flexibility as possible in the way that they're delivered, but also in the way that people can study and learn them. Different people at different stages of their careers have different needs, essentially. And I'll be the first to say that a master's in net zero engineering might not be something that somebody needs. However, they might have a very specific focus on hydrogen. So as you can see, I have 2 postgraduate certificates that form part of the Masters in Net Zero Engineering, but both of those PG certs are standalone courses as well. So we actually began with the PG cert in Zero Carbon Engineering, and you can see the modules that are part of that as well. This is a slightly broader course and topic because we begin with renewables, we then look at sustainability and the driving parameters behind that, and then we look at quantifying energy and carbon. So we look at things like life cycle analysis. We then coupled that and simultaneously ran a PG cert in hydrogen energy systems. And this was really to reflect what we could see going on in Northern Ireland and Ireland to begin with, but we've expanded beyond that as well. So we've got 3 modules here. You can see we begin with the fundamentals, we then look at system integration, and then we look at design and practice as well. Now each of those modules is actually broken down into blocks. So each of my modules contain 4 blocks, and each of those blocks is like a sort of standalone mini course, if you will. The kind of idea of them being sort of bite-sized chunks of information. Now, there might be a couple of people on this call that have been through one of my courses, and they might argue whether that's actually bite-sized or not, but they're designed to have a level of cohesion between these blocks as well. So for instance, in fundamental principles in hydrogen generation and use, the first block of that module, we look at how we make hydrogen at the moment. We look at how we generate hydrogen from fossil fuels. We look at the chemistry behind it. We look at the fundamental principles, because we have to be able to understand that before we then look at the other forms of hydrogen generation. So the second block in that particular module then looks at green hydrogen. It looks at electrolysis. It looks at fuel cells and the key principles behind that as well. So we build these together in the same way that we build blocks together as well. Now, I've had plenty of students that have come in and done a PG cert, and that's been exactly what they need as part of their own career development, as part of their own skills development. But I've also had the students that have enjoyed the course and have decided to come back and do a second PG cert. And that's where there's the ability for students to piece these together in order to obtain the full Masters in Net Zero Engineering. So if a student comes along and does both PG certs, they can then get their MSc in Net Zero Engineering by completing a research project in Net Zero as well. Now there's different formats for the courses. Net Zero Engineering as a Masters is available full-time and on-site, but my PG certs are delivered online and for remote learning. So there's that flexibility. There's not a requirement for you to come in one day a week and be physically in the university and in the classroom, because while that does work for some people, I understand that can help the learning process. At the end of the day, a lot of people are busy, especially if they're working full time. So my PG certs are really aimed at people that are working in related sectors, working in sectors that are undergoing their transition, but they still want to have some skills development and look at some skills transferability as well. So there's a lot of content that is recorded. There's still live sessions on Teams, but it means that people can go through those recordings when they have time. And so far it seems to work really well. I can't say that my courses are easy. Obviously, there is still a challenge, and I'm always beyond impressed when the students are able to manage working full time and being able to study as well, especially when it comes to the assignments and you see the level of assignment submissions that are coming in. It's absolutely fantastic. But what we get to see is a level of experience and perspective from people in industry as well. Now, the Masters in Net Zero Engineering, the full-time on-site one, that obviously attracts a lot of people that have maybe come through an undergraduate, perhaps in chemical engineering. We've seen people come through from physics. We even see some people coming through from geography as well. And in that aspect, they may be looking at skills development, or they're sometimes looking at that transferability where they have an understanding of a certain area, but they want to apply it in this space of net zero or sustainability. So in terms of the structure, we can see how the MSc forms and how we have the standalone courses. It's also worth pointing out that the PG Cert in Hydrogen Energy Systems also forms level 7 within the Hydrogen Training Academy as well. So we're not just designing these courses with the blinkers on in our own world. We're looking at what else is being done and making sure that from a skills perspective that we still have some integration, that we still have cohesion across different academic institutions as well, because it's really important. And we're seeing good development. We're seeing a twofold increase in student numbers in the past academic year, so the one that's just finished, and that's across the PG certs and the full MSc as well. And if we look ahead to the next academic year starting in September, we're seeing increased numbers again, and we're seeing more companies coming on board. We're seeing more engagement with industry, which is fantastic. And it's really important when we look at the projects. So for students coming through the PG certs, they'll complete the MSc by carrying out a research project. And the students who are on the full-time on-site MSc, they're currently undertaking their research projects in the summer at the moment. The four that I've highlighted there, these were the first official MSc projects to run. So you can see the role of hydrogen in HGVs, second life battery use, sizing hydrogen infrastructures needed for fuel cells, and biomethane injection into the Northern Irish grid. Now these were all industry facing because all of the individuals that were undertaking these projects were working in industry. These four very handsome chaps here are the people that undertook that, and actually the way that they're listed on the left hand side matches up with how they're pictured, or the order of that picture as well. So starting with Michael on the left, who was looking at HEVs, and finishing with Lachlan on the far right, looking at biomethane injection. Now these aren't all hydrogen focused, a couple of them are, but they're very much industry focused, and that's what we're interested in as well. And these were the four first official students to graduate with an MSc in net zero engineering, which is a fantastic thing to see. And obviously I was sitting there very proud as they walked across the stage to get their degrees. But what I liked the most is that they all did this via the PG certs. They all came in and did the online PG certs to begin with. They then did the second one, and then they did their research projects. And these were research projects that they ultimately brought forward. I was there to facilitate and support as much as possible. Occasionally I have some expert knowledge as well that I can give them, but this was driven by them. They had a passion for this. They understood the industry need, and what's really nice now is that we can see that being taken forward as well. At least two of those projects were sort of onto phase 2 of them, of how we can develop it further. Specifically, the sizing hydrogen infrastructures needed for fuel cell electric vehicles was by Chris at Wrightbus. We're looking at phase 2 of that particular tool and model, and how it can be more useful. In terms of biomethane injection into the grid, I think most people here would be familiar with some of the headlines that came out earlier this year that is now happening. So Lachlan's project, looking at the feasibility, had a part to play within that as well. And the role of hydrogen in HGVs, again, we're looking at the next phase of that. We're looking at the options that are there for haulage companies to say, well, hydrogen is one option, and we compare it with what else is there. So I think the fact that we can have these as industry facing as much as possible is always a huge benefit, because it shows the level of impact and contribution that we can have when we're looking at the net zero transition. And that brings me to the final slide, and what better way to finish by having a second skills wheel, because one thing better than one wheel is two wheels. This is the skills wheel that I use for my courses. That applies to the PG certs, it applies to the masters as well. It shows or reflects kind of what we're trying to do, and as you can see, I think there's a bit of a split, and what I'm trying to highlight is that yes, we look at fundamental understanding, we look at tools for design, and we look at engineering systems integration. At the end of the day, we are scientists and we are engineers, so we need to understand those fundamentals. You heard David speaking about thermodynamics. It's important that we can understand and appreciate that and know how we apply that. It's important that we understand the chemistry, and then we understand how we apply that chemistry in an engineered system. But if you look at 3 of the other segments of that particular wheel, innovation, communicate opportunities, and driving sustainability, that's less about the fundamental science and engineering and more about the person and the skills as well. So when we're developing courses, we're not just developing them for the sake of it. We're looking at developing the people that are undertaking these courses. At the end of the day, what I want to be able to produce are graduates that are in a position to contribute to net zero and a hydrogen economy as well, to be able to contribute towards that transition, and to do it in a lot of different platforms. I'm not expecting everybody to come out of my courses and be an engineer and design fuel cells. But I like the idea that people can come out and understand the complexity and the challenge that we have, and whether they take that forward in terms of understanding the financial side of things, understanding policy, or even going into fundamental research as well. It's about being able to see that input and that contribution, and being able to see students transfer their skills of what was there to begin with and how they're applying it as well. And that's ultimately where I'd like to finish when we're talking about skills transferability. Okay, folks, that brings us to the end of the recorded sections, it feels slightly strange to be picking up from myself at the end there. But I was very pleased that everything seems to work. I feel like you're always tempting fate somewhat by having a recorded in a webinar at the same time. What I just want to wrap up with is sort of summarizing and really, again, highlighting, I think, that the need for skills development and making sure that we have a focus on individuals, on people, and on communities anytime we talk about a net zero transition. So whether we're talking about hydrogen or any other energy vector, it is heavily, heavily reliant on people. And having said that, I can see on the list of participants, Brian Hood is here as well. A lot of the work that we've just shown within the Hydrogen Training Academy, within my own courses as well, Brian has been fantastic in supplying some of the equipment and testing facilities that we use to give students hands-on experience as well. So when we talk about people and how important it is, there's a good example of it on this call as well. As we go forward and as we look at the development of the renewable hydrogen economy, we're going to see big changes, and we can already see them. We've seen the European Hydrogen Bank come out. We've seen the first auction complete as well. We're seeing policy start to come through. We're seeing more frameworks and supply chains being developed. What I'd like to push as much as possible is that the skills development keeps pace with that and develops simultaneously as well, because it's the best way to have impact within net zero. And finally, what I'd just like to highlight, the annual Hydrogen Island Association conference will be taking place in November this year. We had one last year in November up in Belfast. This time we're going to be down in Cork. As if you needed an excuse to visit a fantastic part of Ireland, well, here you've got one. Come for the hydrogen, stay for the Guinness. If you're able to attend the last one, hopefully you'll agree that it's a fantastic conference, mainly because there was such a range of people there and a really nice sort of range of sessions as well. This wasn't just academics, this wasn't just policymakers or industry people as well. It was a full spectrum of people, and that's what's needed when you need to have a discussion about hydrogen and about overcoming the challenges as well. So you're more than welcome to attend the conference. The QR code is there. You can scan it and it'll take you to the website. In the chat, I've also put up a couple of links to the Hydrogen Island Association. And if you'd like to hear a little bit more about the Hydrogen Training Academy and the fantastic work that it's done, there's a link there for you as well. And that really brings me to the end of this, and I'm just about on time, which is impressive because my timekeeping is absolutely shocking. There's no questions in, oh, there is a, could you please email a link to the webinar? Yes, of course, can. The webinar is being recorded, and I'm more than happy to send out a copy to everyone as well. If you would like to get in touch, like I said, please feel free to. I can see there's a couple of people already sent me some messages on LinkedIn. Continue to do that. If you have already and I haven't replied to you, I promise I will as soon as possible. Other than that, folks, thank you very much for taking time and coming along. I hope you found it useful. And I'll stay online here for a couple of minutes if anyone does have any questions. But if not, thanks again and enjoy the rest of your day.